So the question that I got today, it's a very good mix of acceptance and the self-inquiry practice. I'll read it out loud and then I'll sort of break it down. So the question is, when noticing a strong feeling, sometimes I want to cry, but when I do, I notice that it's hard for me to watch or notice the crying because I feel like it pulls me in. It pulls the noticer in. And then I feel like it's me again, like I'm hurt and wounded, like I'm identifying with being the person that's hurt or wounded and crying. So the question is how to notice how do you notice the crying? And it's a wonderful question because it now brings to our attention a very subtle element of this entire seeing and of this understanding. Generally, we're asked to just observe our feelings, right, rather than reacting to them, resisting them, or allowing them to just become us. We're asked to observe the feeling and sort of almost like you're viewing it from a distance. You're no longer the feeling, but rather, which we call identification, right? You're no longer the feeling, but rather you're observing the strong feeling. Even let's say the if it's overwhelming, you're observing even the overwhelm, because that which is observing the feeling is not itself the feeling. That which is observing even the overwhelm is not itself overwhelmed. So this almost creates a distance between you and that. And you feel a sense of freedom with that. No longer are you bound into that limitation, contraction, whether it be anger, fear, in this question, sadness, due to which you're crying. Um, and so sometimes a bodily response, and that's what we can. So for this question, we can call crying a bodily response to the emotion, or to the whatever thought or whatever it is. And you notice the body, you notice the crying arising, and if it does, again, it's nothing to be resisted. It's not that I'm practicing this acceptance and I don't need to, I shouldn't be crying. If that body, so see acceptance as this: you are this open field of nothingness in which anything that's arising is allowed to arise with no judgment, with no further interpretation or idea of good or bad. That includes crying in this case. That seems to be the, it's like this mask is arising right now. So the personal self, which wears many masks, which is always shifting, because this crying is going to turn into some sort of happiness and then anger and then fear and then a sense of pleasantness, peace, or whatever. So this is just the mask that is arising right now, whether it be the bodily mask, which is a bodily response, or the mental mask, which is whatever emotion or idea, belief. The the observation of the crying, the awareness of the crying, is not itself resisting or wondering if the crying is correct or not, if it's right or wrong. These are simply ideas in the mind, which are also actually observed to happen and then go. So now you're becoming subtle enough to be able to recognize these things. So do not resist the crying either, or whatever other bodily response you may get. Let's say in anger, right? Like some sort of heat or whatever it is. Fear also, maybe the breathing gets much more intense. Just seeing that as it is and letting it be as it is. The problem that was introduced in this question is that, but when I just allow myself to cry, I become the crying, and it's very hard to see it with that separation. Maybe earlier, like when you observe a feeling, it's very easy to, let's say, observe the feeling, and you're no longer that feeling, and it's not gripping you in that way anymore. It's not becoming you. But now you're becoming, you're allowing the crying to arise, not resisting it, but you see that it reinforces the mental position because of which you're crying or whatever it may be. Here's where the subtle part comes in. See that even when it so feels like me, it so feels like the crying is me, and the mental position on behalf of which I'm crying is me, it is still a changeful state. So maybe in the moment you're not able to see that, but this is where reflection comes in. Reflect on that experience and see that even when it felt so close, even if when it felt so real, this feeling, this emotion, this sensation, and the reality that it imposes in my experience, the filter that it imposes in my experience, through which I begin to see everything, that feels so real, yet it passes and turns into something else. Or, in other words, something else takes its place. Another mask, mental and bodily, another filter, which then at that moment feels so real, so vivid, so true. But then that also passes. So, in all of this, we have to reflect what is not passing, what is changeless in the midst of the experience of intensely being the crying and the sadness, versus when that passes and something else takes its place. What is the only commonality in that, in those two experiences? The mind tries to get away with like, okay, oh, it's me or it's awareness. But again, it just at like that thought level. Don't allow it to just get away with that like word that it throws, and then oh, then that's it, because that's not really seeing it for what it truly is. Like if that common element between those two experiences, right? Whatever that common element or essence is also present right now in this experience. Try to see what that is. You can look for it, but you'll end up finding nothing as a substance or an emotion or a thought or a sensation that is it, you know. You'll find like everything from the physical to the subtlest is different about the experience that you're having right now than perhaps that experience when you were so enmeshed within the being, the crying, and what and the experience you were having then. The Your experience of the outside world was different. How the body felt, looked, perhaps, um, that was different. The mental filter through which you were seeing was completely different. The thoughts that were arising were completely different. The feelings and emotions were completely different. What was not different? Even this sense of being the crying and being that mask, which eventually passed. And it's a mask because it passed. We're not just assuming this. It's a mask because it happened and it passed. It's a phenomena. Like it arose and then it subsided. It's no longer there. Therefore, it's not permanent. Therefore, it's not changeless. Therefore, it had a quality, it had characteristics, and it arose and it subsided. It was limited to time and space. So, what was the only commonality? What was the only uh, element which did not change? Again, you can look for that. You just end up finding that you are that. You know, I am the only thing that didn't change. But when we speak like this, we're no longer referring the body or the self image or bundle of thoughts as I, which we usually do in the day to day world. If someone asks you who you are, you're just stating facts about where the body has been and what the body is and who it's all of its characteristics and personality. But that itself in this reflection is being seen as the changeful phenomena. So it almost seems that I is that space or that field in which even the experience of being and becoming the crying or the sadness or this or that is so beautifully being played out, yet not sticking. So even in the midst of when you feel I am the crying, you're still not the crying. And it doesn't damage the experience of I, of myself. It doesn't hinder that in any way. It doesn't damage that in any way. It doesn't take anything away from it. It doesn't add anything onto it. It simply just arises in that space and subsides. This is the subtle part. So even in the midst of identification, you still are not that. You only appear to become that emotion or sensation or thought. You still remain as you are. And that's the beautiful part about this whole thing. It's almost like we have the capacity to go into first person mode of whatever is arising in our experience, and we are able to just completely expand and drop that identification. We have the capacity to be as we are knowingly, or deeply contract ourselves into an appearance. That itself is a beautiful capacity or play that's going on. And this is a reflection to be had. So when you reflect on this experience, of course, in the moment of being the crying, this is not available to you. That's okay. It's not, again, it's not to be further judged or felt bad about that I couldn't do this when I was crying. After the fact, and you see it pass, this is a reflection. You're allowing yourself, and this requires a curiosity from you to really look in your experience again and again and see what is true versus what is untrue, what is here versus what is passing, what is versus what is arising and passing. So that's the beautiful part about this. During the day, how many masks do you wear? How many times do you feel like you are this and whatever you're currently experiencing is so true and everlasting? Yet that the content of whatever um, experience, it passes and it's just replaced with other stuff. But what does not change? So that's sort of what acceptance really is. Of course, it just begins as like a little practice that I'm doing to observe my feelings so that I can create space. But see what is really happening. It starts off that way, and it turns into you knowing yourself as that, in which this whole play arises and subsides. Even the becoming, the emotion, the thought, that itself, even in the midst of identification, it doesn't hinder what you are. It doesn't damage it or affect it, take anything away from it. Similar to, right, the movie playing on the screen, but not damaging the screen. Even if the scene that's currently playing is a war scene and explosions going off, the screen remains as it is and remains the one common factor in all the scenes. So here's where we are now learning to discern between true and false, not on the level of of the mind passing judgment, but really discernment between what is arising and passing versus what is. The only subtle part is we don't see what is as a experience that also arises and passes, because again, the very fact that it would arise and pass, it wouldn't be it. So I just wanted to share this little excerpt from you from the book I Am That, which really goes along with this well. So So one of the questioners says to Maharaj, he says, I do believe you, but when it comes to the actual finding of this inner self, I find it escapes me. So Maharaj says, the idea, it escapes me. Where does it arise? The person says, in the mind. And who knows the mind? The witness of the mind knows the mind. Did anybody come to you and say, I am the witness of your mind? Of course not. He would have been just another idea in the mind being witnessed. So Maharaj asks, then who is the witness? I am. So you know the witness because you are the witness. You need not see the witness in front of you. Here again, to be is to know. So the questioner asks, yes, I see that I am the witness, the awareness itself, but in what way does it profit me? What a question. What kind of profit do you expect? To know what you are, is it not good enough? Questioner asks, what are the uses of self-knowledge? It helps you to understand what you are not and keeps you free from false ideas, desires, and actions. If I am the witness only, what do right and wrong matter? What helps you to know yourself is right. What prevents it is wrong. To know one's real self is bliss. To forget is sorrow. And so the questioner also asks, what is the purpose of meditation? Seeing the false as false is meditation. This must go on all the time. So when you are reflecting in this way, this is a very close element to meditation. It's like a holistic thing. Of course, meditation, we know it as maybe sitting down and just being as we are, or even in the midst of experience, being that witness, being that which knows yet does not appear. But even in this sort of reflection in which you are, let's say even thinking about this, see that this is a discerning between what's true, what is not passing, versus what is arising and passing as experience. No one has to tell you that you are the witness. You are the witness of your entire experience, from the gross and physical to the subtlest. Even this experience of becoming the crying and then this no longer being the case, you're the crier for a short period of time and then it passes and you become something else. This is being witnessed. You speak of it. And so that one that we already are is being spoken of. Because it can't appear as something, because then it would just be another arising and passing experience. That's why the mind fails to recognize it, because the mind can only talk, right? It can only talk about experience. It cannot talk about what is not objectifiable. Matter of fact, the talking and describing is witnessed. It arises in what space, in what field, who knows it. So seeing this more and more clearly, you're like completely dissolving the solidity of your experience, because you're no longer just by seeing by reflecting in this way, by discerning between the true and the false, you're no longer just being the appearance of the body journeying through a physical world. You All of this appearance, body included, thoughts included, idea of yourself included, is arising in the space of witnessing. That itself is not arising in passing. So you become motionless in this seeing. Not as another experience, but just a clear seeing. You are seeing and knowing and being that which is not arising and passing as an experience. And that comes with its perhaps its effect in the body and mind as some sort of peace or happiness. You see, but again, you're no longer just taking that to be another, oh, this is it. Whatever the however the mind may react is just another experience. However, the because again, the mind and body itself are experiences. They are not any like they don't have any solid reality to them. I hope this is making sense. And the most important part of this excerpt was, you are the witness. You know the witness because you are the witness. You need not see the witness in front of you to know you're the witness. To be the witness is to know the witness. That's why we often refer to as like knowingly being yourself. When we talk about, like, when we describe meditation in this way, knowingly being yourself, we're not referring to an experience. We're not referring to the body, the mind, or the person we take ourselves to be, right? We had a call on Sunday just now where the whole topic was about the question, who am I, presupposes that you are not just the experience of the body. And so this is what is really referring to. The book that we just actually read that from is I Am That. And that's what the entire excerpt technically is really referring to as well. And what we spoke of in this little segment, that even in the midst of being this or being that, and you really feeling that I am the crier, I am the sadness, and you feel this, like you feel that as so real and true, still you are not that. Again, in the midst of that very strong identification, which perhaps you're even deeply suffering, even the experience of the suffering, you still are as you are. So seeing this clearly is not helping you become something or attain something. It is only clearing away the illusion of being that which you are not. Almost like a formless hypnosis is sort of wearing off on its own. When we refer to silence, we're not talking about an experience. We are simply, we're not referring to silence as some sort of objective experience that perhaps looks like the lack of hecticness or noise. When we refer to silence, we are talking about knowingly being just the witness, no longer becoming this or becoming that, taking yourself to be this or taking yourself to be that, which the tendency is very strong when you just begin meditation and inquiry. This tendency is what starts to diminish. So here you need not, silence is not either there or not there, depending on if you are sitting down by yourself on your couch versus when you are in the midst of work and a lot of activity. It is the background of all activity and all inactivity. It is the field in which the appearance of sitting on the couch or being in the midst of an office job or whatever arises and subsides. Knowingly being the witness is silence. Knowingly being yourself is meditation. It is the cleansing factor of all these incorrect notions, ideas, desires, fears, resistances. Right? As we referred to it on the last call as the glue, all these desires, fears, resistances that become us, that we become immersed in, we become identified with. This is the glue that keeps the uh, illusion of being a person inside of a world journeying really solid. It keeps that illusion going. Whereas the practice in the way that we described it today, knowingly being just yourself being the witnessing, that starts to dissolve the solidity of the perception of being a body journeying through a world, having these experiences. Now the body itself, the personality itself, is seen to be a rising and passing show. In what? And being seen by what? That is the reflection. That is the inquiry. And it brings us to a lack of words because words cannot describe anything that is that doesn't have an objective quality. They cannot say anything more about the witness than being just witness, the word witness. And the word witness, again, is not referring to an objective experience. Seeing this is being it, not seeing this as some sort of thought or experience. When you do sit for a moment with no really intention to make anything happen, when you're just sitting in silence, you may notice the mind saying all sorts of silly things about this, about even what the pointer is. And it's maybe saying things like, I just want to be the witness already. I just want to get it. And in that moment, we are that perspective. Oh, I don't get this, but I just wish I did. I just want to be the witness already. But that perspective also passes. It is witnessed. That thought itself is is witnessed. So earlier, what we were referring to, like the conversation that we had earlier in regards to in the midst of crying, being the crying and it feeling so real, but that experience passes. Just like this the simple little thought that arises and says, I don't get it, but I wish I did. Or I just want to fast track this, or I just want to become the witness. This itself is just a perspective. It is a lens that we become in the moment that feels so real, that feels like it is me speaking, me experiencing. But this filter passes, this thought passes. In the midst of identification with both the crying, the being happy, the mind thinking this, mind thinking that, it does not hinder the witnessing. It is all witnessed, not by somebody else, but witnessed by me. And I, the witness, the witnessing, is the only unchanging element of all experience. See the changefulness of the stream of mind. See how it's such a changeful flow. It's always flowing like a river. But put the body also in that. Like we feel like the body has some sense of solidity and stability, but it doesn't. It is a constantly changing perceptual experience. Maybe not as changeful as the mind. It changes very little, minutely, so that we barely may not even notice it. But on a day by day level, it can be noticed, especially on if you let a few years pass, it can certainly be noticed. So the body, even though it's changing very little in the way it feels, in the way it functions, in the way it looks, see it as a very changeful experience, just like you see the mind clearly being changeful. And nobody has to tell you the world is changeful. You know that. So all of this changing experience, arising, passing, flashing, and vanishing. Who are you that sees this? Who are you that knows this? As what do you know this? This is what I was sharing earlier, that this is dissolving the paradigm of being the body, witnessing or having an awareness, traveling through the world, getting something, or even having some sort of spiritual experience. Now this changes things, this reflection automatically, right? Because it brings you to the fact of being that in which Even the experience of the body is arising and passing, changing, like the stream of mind. So now the world, body, and mind are being perceived, arising, passing, happening, not happening, looking like this, feeling like this, thinking this, then looking like that, feeling like that. So it's constantly just changing. If you need help with this, with living this teaching, this understanding, if you want the consistent guidance and support, learn more about my School of Awakening. It will absolutely transform your entire practice, your understanding. The link is in the description box below.